Have you ever just wished that you could stop overeating at night, because then you'd definitely be able to lose weight because you wouldn't be ruining your diet every single day? Have you told yourself a million times that you just need to get a grip, and that if you make sure that you're super disciplined and that you have loads of self-control, that you will be able to commit to this? And has that ever worked? If you're watching this, it's probably because it hasn't. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly why you keep overeating at night, why discipline only makes the problem worse, and what you can do to break out of this never-ending cycle of telling yourself that you're not going to binge and ending up binging every single day, so that you can finally actually start losing weight and keep it off for life. Now, if you're new here, my name's Clara. I'm a chartered psychologist, a healthcare professions council, registered sport and exercise psychologist, and a fitness coach. And the first thing that I want you to know about emotional eating is that it makes sense in context. It's not random, it's functional, it has a purpose. And therefore, in order to stop emotional eating, the most important thing that you have to do is actually understand the purpose that emotional eating, or in this case, eating at night, is serving in your life. In response to distress, from literally age 0, we are taught that we will be fed in response to that. And that is often something that helps us regulate, because as humans, we are biologically hardwired to be soothed by eating. We are biologically hardwired to feel comforted by food, which is incredibly advantageous. But what it does is it sets a precedent for then encountering that same response that we've already learned later on in life. So already we're starting to see that eating in response to feeling some kind of way about life is not a moral failing, and is simply a learned and biologically ingrained response. We do it not because we're stupid or lacking in discipline, but because food is actually soothing. We know that we have a biological predisposition to be appeased when we are in distress by food and by eating and by receiving that kind of nourishment. And now we've got that foundational understanding of knowing that eating in response to stress is not a morally bad thing to do. We can then start to understand the additional functions that food can play in our life, that eating can have in our life. We learn that when we are distressed, we can eat food and that we feel better. And that is a lesson that is repeated and reinforced throughout our entire life. When we come to adulthood and we find ourselves in distress, in the absence of any other tools and skills to be able to manage that distress, it makes sense that we would find ourselves seeking out food to be able to appease from that difficult experience that we're having in that moment, which therefore leads me to say that emotional eating makes sense in context and is functional, because more often than not, it helps us tackle the difficult thoughts, feelings, emotions, and distresses that we experience in our day-to-day lives. And that is why it typically happens at night, because we're trying to sit down, we're trying to unwind, and if we've not been able to use or apply any other self-regulation skills throughout the day, whether because we've not had the chance to do it or because we actually don't even have those skills, then it makes sense that it would get to the end of the day and that the needs that we still have that are unmet, as in like the emotions, the difficult shit that's been there, that is not being tackled, is still there and still needs tackling. It makes sense that we would then find ourselves reaching out for food to meet that need. And in the day and age that we live in, typically we might find ourselves utilizing substances such as food to help us numb difficult thoughts and feelings, to help us get rid of them, to help us go into a trance and almost like block and create space away from them, or to push these feelings down or push them away. And so understanding that food is something that can help us do exactly that helps us then start to understand the problem that we're really working with, because emotional eating, and especially emotional eating at night, is a response more often than not to a dysregulated emotional system. And that's why emotional eating is not something that you can tackle with more discipline or more self-control, because emotional eating has got nothing to do with discipline and self-control. It's not a matter of willingness, it's not a matter of commitment to a goal. It is a matter of having needs that have not been met because either the tools to meet them are not there, or because we don't know what those needs are, or because we don't know how to meet those needs. And this is where it can get really tricky, because I've just told you that eating in response to distress is the most natural biological thing that you could possibly do, and that if you didn't have, or if you don't have any other additional tools or skills to know how to manage distress or difficult emotions and sort of respond to emotional dysregulations, like that feeling of overwhelm and that feeling of like everything being too much and not really know what to do with that, then you don't really have a choice, right? Like if you don't have any other tools to tackle a problem and you use the thing that you have, we don't really have a choice. You just did what you could to manage it. But the fitness industry, and specifically certain fitness coaches, will work tirelessly to convince you that you are the problem and that their 12-week course is the solution. Why do they do that? Because in that 12-week course, they can sell you the accountability that you think that you need, and they can make you think that the reason that you're failing is because you're not committed enough, you're not disciplined enough, and you don't have enough self-control around food, which sounds a lot sexier and a lot more appealing and a lot more tangible than saying, actually, you need to learn how to regulate your emotions, and you need to learn how to tackle stress in a way that doesn't involve food, because that is a message. The self-control, self-discipline message is something that is promoted within particularly westernized cultures, within very individualistic cultures, within very capitalistic cultures. And so it appeals to, you know, our society at large to think that if I just build my self-control skills and if I have the accountability and someone to keep me right, then I will be able to lose weight. But it doesn't work like that. And in fact, trying to be more disciplined does backfire and make you end up gaining even more weight, because it sets up a precedent for you failing. And the reason why these coaches keep selling you this is because it keeps you stuck. Because by telling you that you need discipline and accountability and not actually helping you tackle the issue that needs to be tackled, you essentially go under this false illusion or false pretense that you're doing really well for 12 weeks. You lose a bunch of weight, and then that support is removed and you think you're completely fucking fine, but something happens, you get derailed, you have a terrible day, and guess what? You end up binging again, and then you think that you need even more discipline. The reason why I wasn't successful was because I wasn't disciplined enough. I need a coach to be even harsher with me, etc., etc. But that benefits these coaches because they can keep selling you their programs and they can keep selling you their support, which isn't actually meeting the need that you have, which is learning how to become more emotionally regulated. And yet all of this explains why you end up binging at night, because that is a time that you're trying to relax. That is when, you know, there's no distractions that are like pulling your attention away from the things that have been showing up within you that you're experiencing or that you've been trying to avoid experiencing. And so when you sit down, try to relax, try to disconnect from life at the end of the day, and you find yourself feeling totally uneasy, rather than sitting and trying to acknowledge what's going on because no one's taught you how to do that, you think, oh, that's that kind of feeling. Your brain just goes, well, you need chocolate. Again, because it's worked before, because eating in response to distress has soothed you before, you just make that association. And before you know it, you have one, you feel like you've failed. And then off the back of that, you end up pressing the fucker button, because what's the point in trying? Why do I even bother? I may as well just have the whole thing. And you eat. Again, the worse you feel, the more you want to eat, because eating kind of keeps suppressing those shitty feelings. So it ends up in this real tangled up mess that, unless you have the skills to be able to break it, becomes impossible to pull out of. But that's why you're here, right? To learn exactly what to do in response to it. So what do I do with my clients when they come to me telling me that no matter how hard they try, no matter how much they hate themselves, that they cannot seem to stop binging at night? Well, the first thing that I do is we start to explore a little bit around the fear that they have of binging, which is super typical. When you have spent a lot of your life binging, restricting, you start to develop a fear and an anxiety of something derailing you and stopping you from being good, that is then, you know, inevitably in your experience going to lead to binge, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Having a fear of binge eating when you have repeated the on and off cycle makes a lot of sense. But what I'm interested in knowing is not just the fear of binging and what causes that, because I can kind of get a sense of it, but it's what does that fear of binging make you want to do? And here's the crux. For a lot of people who experience a fear of binging, what they will do is, in anticipation of a potential binge risk at night, they will try to restrict their food intake throughout the day, which is catastrophic for binge eating. The more you restrict throughout the day, the more likely you are to binge at night. Research has demonstrated this over and over again. And in fact, regular eating is one of the most proven interventions to be able to stop somebody or to be able to support someone who's struggling with binge eating, because by meeting the need of physiological hunger earlier in the day, the likelihood of somebody actually binging later at night is significantly lower. And not only that, when you've had enough food throughout the day, your capacity, your mental and physical capacity for dealing with difficult emotions, thoughts, feelings that have shown up throughout the day that would trigger you to binge is significantly higher. So restricting as a result of a fear of binging makes a lot of sense, but it is a huge cause and a huge contributor of the problem that keeps it going, because it means that you're more likely to be absolutely starving and, you know, not feeling good at the end of the day, meaning that you feel like a bottomless pit and you're more likely to eat more. But also because a lack of appropriate nutrition throughout the day means that your capacity to deal with difficult stuff, your capacity to be emotionally regulated, is significantly diminished, meaning that you're more likely to feel even more discombobulated, even more dysregulated at the end of the day as a result of whatever has happened, meaning that the risk of binging increases massively. So the first and most important thing that you need to do if you want to stop stop binge eating at night is you need to start eating more during the day. And I know that that's terrifying, which is why I've got an 8-week course coming up at the beginning of October that will help you address exactly this. If you want to find out more information and be the first to hear all about it, you can sign up to my email list in the link in the description and you'll know about it as soon as it's out. But yeah, eating more throughout the day is one of the most important steps that you have to take if you want to stop binge eating at night. And secondly, once that physiological hunger has been dealt with, then we can normally see like the residue, like what's actually left. And that is where you can start to notice what types of emotional regulation skills you need to build. For example, for a lot of people, that chain reaction that I just described, where you restrict throughout the day because you're scared of binging, that could be starting a couple of steps earlier because you don't feel like you're good enough. Now, if you don't feel like you're good enough in this day and age, something that you might try to do is change your appearance, or a reason for which you might not feel good enough is because of your appearance, or could be because of your appearance. So what are you going to do? It's likely that you might try to reduce your food intake and over exercise. But of course, because you don't feel good enough, you're trying to compensate for that, which means that you're likely to end up overstretching yourself in an attempt to get away from those thoughts and feelings as quickly as possible. The quicker I lose weight, the quicker or the sooner I will stop feeling shit, right? But because you're setting yourself expectations that you can't actually meet, you end up eventually slipping, for example, having an extra cookie or something like that. And because that is so intolerable, and because it confirms that you are in fact not good enough or a failure and all these sorts of things, you might then find yourself binge eating or pressing the fuck it button. And that might typically happen at nighttime, which sets up this whole precedent. Now, if that's resonating with you, then you need to download my 4-week fat loss mindset reset, because in it, I will teach you exactly how to tackle that self-esteem that, for me, in my opinion, in my professional opinion of like, you know, over half a decade of doing this work, not feeling good enough is at the crux of why anybody struggles with body image, with overeating, with undereating, with overexercise, with underexercise. The whole works. But more often than not feeling good enough is why you keep binge eating and why you cannot lose weight, even though you think that that is a motivator for you. So if you want to tackle that straight away completely for free, you can download that 4-week course from the link in the description. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes all we need is some more tools to be able to know how to manage our difficult emotions before we reach for food straight away. And I do have another free downloadable that you can save on your phone and literally pull it out whenever you feel like you're about to slam your hand over the fuck it button, and you can use that at any point. That will help you not emotionally eat and not overeat and not binge at night, if that is when you find yourself doing it most often. So just to summarize, eating enough throughout the day and learning how to emotionally regulate are two of the most important skills that you need to be able to develop if you want to stop binge eating at night. And I've got resources to support you with all of those things in the description. And if you want to learn a bit more about emotional eating and why you do it, click on this video up here. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.